Grandma, it's me. Those three words cost 12,000 victims their life savings. Margaret Holloway was 81 years old when her phone rang at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Grandma, it's Brandon, I'm in trouble. The voice was her grandson's. That slight catch in his throat when he was nervous, the way he said grandma, drawing out the first syllable like he had since he was 5. Brandon explained he'd been in a car accident. Someone was hurt. He'd been arrested. He needed bail money, $15,000. The lawyer was handling everything, but they needed cash. Today. Please don't tell Mom and Dad, they'll be so disappointed. Margaret drove to her bank, withdrew $15,000 in cash. A courier, sent by the lawyer, picked it up from her home. Brandon called that evening to thank her. The real Brandon was in Seattle at work. He'd never been in an accident. He'd never called his grandmother. But his voice had, for 4 years, a network of call centers in Tijuana, Mexico, used AI to clone the voices of family members and extort elderly Americans. 3 seconds of audio from social media was enough to create a perfect replica. $340 million stolen, 12,847 victims, an average age of 73. This is the story of Operation Grandchild and the courier who brought down the network after his own grandmother was targeted. The grandparent scam is decades old. A caller pretends to be a grandchild in distress, accident, arrest, medical emergency. They need money immediately, and they need it kept secret. It works because grandparents want to help, because they don't want their grandchildren to suffer. Because the urgency prevents careful thinking. Traditional versions relied on generic approaches. Hi, Grandma, it's me. The victim fills in the name themselves. Confirmation bias does the rest. But modern grandparents are savvier. They ask questions. They want proof. AI provided proof. Voice cloning changed everything. 3 seconds of someone speaking, pulled from Instagram videos, TikTok posts, YouTube clips, Facebook uploads, was enough to create a convincing replica. The AI learned speech patterns, vocabulary choices, emotional tones, regional accents. When the clone voice called, it didn't just sound like the grandchild. It was the grandchild's voice. Every word generated in real time. Responding to questions, adapting to the conversation, expressing emotions that matched the claimed situation. The only thing artificial was the entire conversation. The network that FBI designated Operation Grandchild was based in Tijuana. The location was strategic, close enough to the U.S. border for logistics, far enough for jurisdictional protection, Spanish-speaking labor pool for operators, established infrastructure for phone-based scams. The network had evolved from earlier operations. Traditional call center scams, fake IRS threats, computer virus warnings, lottery winnings, had become less profitable as awareness spread. The grandparent scam was different. Elderly victims were less likely to report, more likely to have savings, more emotionally vulnerable to family distress. Adding voice cloning made it unstoppable. The operation grew quickly. By early 2022, 23 call centers operated across Tijuana. Over 200 operators worked phones. A technical team of 12 maintained the AI systems. Target identification began with data. Dark web marketplaces sold databases of elderly Americans, names, addresses, phone numbers, family relationships, cross-referenced with social media profiles. For each target, operators identified grandchildren. Social media made this trivially easy. Most people's Facebook friends include family members. Most Instagram posts are geotagged. Most TikTok accounts are public. A grandparent's profile led to their children's profiles, led to their grandchildren's profiles, led to videos of those grandchildren speaking. 3 seconds of audio. That's all the AI needed. The cloning process was automated. Custom software scraped target videos, extracted audio, cleaned background noise, fed the samples to voice synthesis models. Within hours, a digital copy of the grandchild existed. Operators could type any text. The system would speak it in the grandchild's voice. The calls followed tested scripts. Initial distress. Establish identity through the familiar voice. Create urgency through the situation. Prevent verification by emphasizing secrecy. I'm so scared. Please don't tell Mom, she'll freak out. The lawyer says it has to be cash. They're going to transfer me soon, I have to go. Each phrase designed to trigger protective instincts, to override rational thought, to create pressure that demanded immediate action. The operators were skilled. Many had backgrounds in legitimate sales. Some had worked legal call centers. All had been trained in emotional manipulation. They knew how to sound scared, how to sound grateful, how to cry convincingly. They practiced their roles daily, received coaching on improved techniques, studied successful calls to understand what worked. The operation ran quality assurance. Supervisors monitored calls, feedback was provided, performance was measured. This wasn't amateur fraud, it was industrialized emotional exploitation. The call center workers earned approximately $12 per hour. Good money in Tijuana. They were told they were doing collections work. Some believed it. Most understood the truth and chose not to care. The victims were abstractions, voices on phones, sources of income, not real people with real lives. Psychological distance made participation possible. Combined with AI-generated voices, they were devastating. The money extraction used multiple methods. Cash remained common. Victims were instructed to withdraw funds and meet couriers who would transport the bail money. Gift cards had become popular, easier to purchase, easier to convert, less traceable. Cryptocurrency was emerging. Tech-savvy victims could transfer Bitcoin directly. No middlemen. Instant international movement. Wire transfers still worked for larger amounts. Bank employees sometimes questioned elderly customers making unusual withdrawals, but not always. The courier network was essential. Money needed to physically move from victims to the organization. The network employed approximately 200 couriers across the United States, mostly young people recruited through fake job listings. Delivery driver, customer service representative, financial courier. Some knew they were participating in fraud. Most convinced themselves otherwise. The money was legal fees, as the packages were confidential documents. The cash was investment transfers. Willful ignorance enabled participation. The couriers were paid well already, typically $300 to $500 per pickup, enough to discourage questions. One of those couriers was 23-year-old Diego Reyes. Reyes had been recruited in Phoenix in spring 2023. The job seemed legitimate, a logistics company, pickup and delivery cash payments, which wasn't unusual for certain industries. He made good money, he didn't ask questions. Then his grandmother called him. She'd received a call from Diego. He was in jail. He needed bail money. She was about to withdraw $12,000. The real Diego was at home. He hadn't called anyone. He told her to stop. Explained it was a scam. She was confused. The voice had sounded exactly like him. Diego started paying attention to his job. The pickups were always from elderly people, the packages were always cash, the legal fees were always urgent. He realized what he'd been doing. He had two choices: disappear and hope no one found out, or do something. He chose to do something. Diego contacted the FBI field office in Phoenix. His cooperation provided what investigators had struggled to obtain: direct access to the operation's logistics. He continued making pickups, but now he documented everything: addresses, amounts, victim names, the phone numbers he reported to. More importantly, he mapped the chain of custody. After pickup, couriers transferred cash to regional handlers. Handlers consolidated funds and deposited them into business accounts. The accounts belonged to shell companies that moved money to Mexico through seemingly legitimate transactions. Diego identified 15 other couriers in Arizona alone. Investigators expanded surveillance. The courier network extended across 12 states. 200 individuals making pickups, reporting to regional handlers, who reported to controllers in Tijuana. Financial tracking followed the money trail. The shell companies showed revenue from consulting services and import/export. In reality, they existed only to move scam proceeds. Banking records revealed the scale: $340 million over 4 years, an average of $85 million annually. 12,847 victims documented. The average loss was approximately $26,000. Some victims lost everything. A 91-year-old retired teacher in Ohio lost $147,000, the entirety of her life savings, to a voice she believed was her grandson. Her grandson had been dead for 3 years. The scammers had cloned his voice from old Facebook videos. They'd called pretending to be a ghost. The international coordination took months. FBI couldn't simply raid Tijuana call centers. Mexican law enforcement had to be involved. Extradition agreements had to be confirmed. Operations had to be synchronized. But Mexican authorities were motivated. The same networks running grandparent scams were connected to cartels. Money from phone fraud funded more serious operations. Dismantling the call centers served Mexican interests too. Joint task force planning began in summer 2023. The American side would arrest couriers and seize financial infrastructure. The Mexican side would hit the call centers and technical facilities. Everything had to happen simultaneously. February 7th, 2024, at 5 a.m. Pacific Time, coordinated raids launched. In Tijuana, Mexican federal police raided 23 locations. The call centers looked like legitimate businesses: office buildings with normal signage, workers with headsets and monitors, coffee machines and motivational posters. Inside, investigators found scripts for emotional manipulation, training materials on American elderly psychology, AI systems generating grandsons' voices in real time. At the largest facility, An operator was mid-call when police entered. He was crying into his headset, begging his grandmother to help him. He wasn't anyone's grandson. He was a 32-year-old father of two, earning $12 an hour to destroy elderly strangers. In the United States, FBI arrested 187 individuals. The courier network collapsed simultaneously. In Phoenix, Los Angeles, Houston, Chicago, Miami, New York, everywhere couriers had operated, they were taken into custody. Regional handlers faced heavier charges. They'd knowingly coordinated fraud networks. Diego Reyes testified in sealed proceedings. His cooperation had been essential. His identity was protected. The financial seizures totaled $43 million. Accounts frozen, assets forfeited, shell companies dissolved, a fraction of what had been stolen. But something. The prosecutions unfolded across multiple jurisdictions. In Mexico, call center operators faced charges under Mexican fraud statutes. The technical team faced additional charges for organized crime involvement. The network's leadership, 2 Mexican nationals and 1 American who'd built the operation, faced extradition. The American, Robert Patterson, had established the AI systems. Former tech worker, legitimate background. He'd seen opportunity in combining old scams with new technology. His expertise had enabled everything. Patterson received 34 years. In America, couriers faced varied treatment. Those who'd knowingly participated received substantial sentences, 8 to 15 years depending on their role and the amounts they'd moved. Those who'd been genuinely deceived received lesser charges. Some cooperated and received probation. The distinction mattered. Many couriers were themselves victims, recruited through fake jobs, manipulated into participation, trapped by their own complicity. The system that exploited grandparents had also exploited them. The victim recovery process was devastating to witness. 12,847 people had lost money. Most were over 70, many lived on fixed incomes. The stolen funds represented years of careful saving. Some lost homes, some lost retirement security, some lost independence. The psychological damage was worse than financial. They'd heard their grandchildren's voices asking for help. They believed they were protecting family. Learning that the voice was fake, that their instinct to help had been weaponized, left wounds that money couldn't heal. Trust in phone calls disappeared. Trust in family voices disappeared. Trust in their own judgment disappeared. Many victims blamed themselves. Why hadn't they verified? Why hadn't they called their grandchild's real number? Why hadn't they been more suspicious? These questions haunted them. The truth was that they'd done what loving grandparents do. They'd heard a family member in distress and responded immediately. The crime wasn't their gullibility, it was the exploitation of their love. Mental health professionals reported increased anxiety and depression among elderly victims. Some became afraid to answer their phones at all. Others withdrew from family contact, embarrassed by what had happened. The operation hadn't just stolen money, it had stolen trust in one of the most fundamental human experiences, recognizing the voice of someone you love. Support groups formed. Counseling services expanded, but nothing could fully address what had been taken. The policy response included technology requirements. Phone carriers implemented voice authentication systems. Consumer protection agencies launched awareness campaigns. Family communication protocols became recommended. Code words that real family members would know. But the technology continues to advance. Voice cloning now requires less than 1 second of sample audio. Real-time synthesis has improved beyond easy detection. The tools that Patterson and his team built have been replicated and improved. Open source versions exist. Tutorials are available online. What required specialized expertise in 2022 can now be done by anyone with basic technical skills. The next generation of grandparent scams will be more convincing than this one. They'll use better AI, better operational security, better understanding of what works, and the fundamental vulnerability will remain. Grandparents love their grandchildren. That love makes them want to help. That desire to help can be exploited by anyone who can replicate a familiar voice. If you have elderly relatives, talk to them about these calls. Establish code words. Verify unexpected contacts through known numbers. Explain that voices can be faked. Conversation might feel awkward. The alternative is a phone call at 2:47 p.m. from a voice that sounds exactly like family, asking for help, demanding secrecy, taking everything. Grandma, it's me. Those 3 words, 3 seconds of audio. A lifetime of savings. The voice was perfect. It just wasn't real.